Okay, I am going to be running a video and reading to you the second chapter of the book, The Starseed Transmissions. This has been my attempt to try to explain to people the Mandela effect and how things are not what they seem to be, because we're so bought into a reality that is only what our senses can sense. But now I've been seeing things in light, and I've learned how to take pictures of what I see in light. This is an example. I'll start this one going. I'm going to start reading this, and while I'm reading, you can see this. I'm filming light here, and I'm just filming into a shiny spot of light. And during the course of this, you'll see me pull the camera back out so that you can see what I am filming, so stick with it. And I just want to tell you, light is fractal. This certainly looks fractal. There's a world of light all around us. We don't see it, but it's all around us in what we call empty space. There's just a whole lot we need to learn, and we need to start thinking outside the box and taking into account that we might not really know all there is to know about our life here and what our future might be. So this is the second chapter I'll start, called The Other Reality, and this being that is speaking is talking about us too, because we belong to this other reality as well. The other reality. In your natural state of being, you have no sense of identity distinct from the Creator except when you are engaged in a relationship. On this level of being, identity comes into focus only in the context of a relationship with some other aspect of being that has become objectified, much as my identity as an angelic messenger comes into being through my relationship with you. When such a relationship is not taking place, that particular expression of you simply does not exist. You float effortlessly in the potential of God. You are not annihilated, but all definitions of you are, and you are released from their restraining influence, allowed to expand into a state of love and perfection. By and by it should happen, if it should happen, that you are needed for a particular function. You will still be there, for your form identity is a specific cell in a specific organ of a larger being. When the next energizing impulse comes, it also brings you your definition and instruction. You come into the necessary degree of focus for whatever is required. Throughout the course of your existence, you continually oscillate like the wave function that you essentially are, in and out of focus, in and out of definition, always moving back and forth like the pendulum on a clock or the heart of an atom, out of the unity of being with God into a finite expression of God's infinite potential, and then back into unity once more, back and forth, back and forth. This is the natural rhythm of your existence, just as it is of mine. It is the song of God, the rhythm of life itself. Whenever the divine impulse calls upon your services and brings you into form, you encounter other beings of infinite variety on errands and excursions in worlds of love and light that are impossible to describe. As this happens, you experience for the duration of your contact both an identity and a linear time world. But in the course of your encounter, you are still aware of your unity with the Creator. You do not lose the certainty of your oneness with God. You are aware of your form identity and of the motion of time. Yet you oscillate faster than the speed of light back and forth between your pre-manifest state and your species role form. This is nothing more or less than every atom of physical creation is doing all the time. Before the fall, you had the ability to shift the center of your awareness from deity to identity, from form to metaform at will. You were free, as it were, to come and go as you pleased, free to emphasize whatever aspect of yourself suited the situation. It is such that all creatures are made. In a healthy state, you are functioning in two realities at once. Half of the time you are focused on your form identity, and the other half of your identity with the totality of what is. In the fallen state of consciousness, you find yourself trapped with your awareness on one side only, while the actual substance of your being continues to function on both sides. This is what unconsciousness is all about. You still exist in that other reality, but you are asleep. In the reality you now think to be the only reality, you are fragmented. The human race seems to be composed of a multitude of beings. In the other reality, there is only you. We are here to wake you up. There is really only one of you who needs to hear this message. It is important that you return to a consciousness of your true self. For though you still exist in both realities, unconsciousness of your identity with the Creator is cutting off the flow of life-giving information to the part of you that exists in form. Your existence in identity with God is the reality from which all life springs. Focusing your attention exclusively on form greatly restricts and eventually curtails the flow of life currents. As I search your simple storage systems for a word with which to express something of the reality in which you exist, as one with your Creator, I come across the American Indian word, Nagwal. It is a term which you understand to mean everything that cannot be named. This is a good word for the region of being, the region of unity. I will use this word for a moment to emphasize a point. In the pre-fall state of awareness, you existed in the Nagwal, the all, the everything, the nothing, the primal void, where all exist in a state of potential. This is the Creator that surrounds creation, like the sea surrounds a fish. Out of this Nagwal, you are called many times to dwell for the space of a relationship. In its opposite, the tonal. The tonal is everything that can be named. It is the imaginary world of God in which all apparent differences exist. It is the playground of what is. The tonal draws all of its substance from the Nagwal. It cannot exist apart from the Nagwal. While the Nagwal is a dynamic yet steady state of rest, the tonal or manifest physical universe is continuously flashing on and off. This oscillation occurs in all things manifest, from the smallest subatomic particle to the greatest galaxy. All of us, angels, humans, anything that can be named, are only in form one half of the time. The other half of the time we exist in the totality of being. The totality of being that we have been calling the Nagwal has also been called God, the Father. It is the life of God the Father that animates all creation. It is this reality that all healthy creatures oscillate back and forth to and exist in half the time. In this reality, we do not exist in time or space, for we can name these. They are both features of the manifest universe. From this spaceless, timeless state, we derive all energy, blessing, and nourishment. This always holds true even for you in the fallen condition. The difference is that in the fallen state, you are not aware of this process and therefore unable to participate in it consciously. By forfeiting your ability to oscillate in consciousness between the two realities in which you dwell, you are restricted to an awareness of just the tonal, just the material, conceptual world. It was so quiet around here, and then someone came and the dog started up. You still receive your nourishment from the light of the Nagwal, but no longer directly, only through animals, plants, and minerals. You are unconscious of being and conscious only of form. How did you lose the ability to shift your awareness from deity to identity, from form to metaform? How did you lose God consciousness? How did you fall into the illusion of separation? I will tell you, it was through a simple lack of faith. It was through a loss of confidence in the absolute perfection of the universal design. This was brought about by the entry of a single factor into your existence: fear. The serpent in the garden, the devil in history. Through a subtle process of reasoning, this being encouraged you to move in a pattern of activity that has come to be called original sin. It was a pattern of activity that you were never designed to move in. With a clever and subtle lie, you were convinced to not exactly stop trusting in God, but to stop trusting exclusively in God. The moment you did this, your consciousness began to shift from God-centeredness to self-centeredness, and for the first time, you became more aware of your identity in form than of your identity in God. This shift in awareness was minimal at first, but enough to begin what was to become a long spiral downward through denser and denser levels of energy bondage and restraint. For Satan, your tempter, is the materializing influence, who in its right place is responsible for the bonding of energy in the creation of matter. As you began to focus more and more upon your identity and form, you began thinking in terms of defending that form with unnecessary and cumbersome ego structures. It became harder for you to avoid identifying with your experience. You began to carry over past patterns of behavioral response into new relationships. This made you less effective in those relationships because you were no longer fully present, no longer using the fullness of your potential. You were beginning to build up around yourself energized thought structures that imprisoned you. Okay, I'm going to stop right here because I have another video. So I can get it up here. Okay. I call this one Orbs, more like what I see with the naked eye. Now let me get it on the big page. Okay. And get it going. It didn't do the big thing. Oh well, I will let it be small and just change my focus a little bit on my camera. In this video, I'm showing how the light, how it comes out of the light source and some of the maneuvers it makes before it becomes a big round orb that I mostly show in my still pictures. Okay, now to get back to this. It became harder for you to avoid identifying with your experience. You began to carry over past patterns of behavioral response into new relationships. This made you less effective in those relationships because you were no longer fully present, no longer using the fullness of your potential. You were beginning to build up around yourself energized thought structures that imprisoned you. You were drawn by simple gravitational attraction to those realms of space where energy was in the process of being bonded, where matter was being created. Particles of physical substance began to gather along the magnetic lines of your thought structures, and you began to identify with denser and denser levels of physical expression. The process went on for a long while before you actually found yourself in any kind of physical garden. When you did, you had already fallen a long way from your original state of grace, but you were still functioning on a level of awareness far enough above and beyond your present condition to give rise to all of the myths and legends of a physical paradise. The physical Garden of Eden lasted for many centuries on Earth before the momentum of the materializing processes caused you to rely so much upon the physical senses that you became cut off from the direct nourishment of divine light. In reality, you have never been cut off from this nourishment, but as your sense of identity became almost exclusively wedded to your physical bodies, their growing density began demanding more and more earth substance for their support. You finally reached a point where you could no longer meet the demands of your physical bodies without work. It is at this point that your chronicles state that you were driven from the garden. In truth, you were never driven from the garden. The garden is still there, surrounding you even now. Language is only capable of communicating on one level at a time, yet the fall was a simultaneous multi-leveled occurrence. While you were clothing yourself with increasing layers of material identification, you were also becoming more and more fragmented within yourself. As you began to bring into your relationships a sense of identity based on previous relationships, you were not only lessening your own presence and effectiveness in current relationships, you were also creating separation within yourself. None of your past experiences were comprehensive enough. I lost my place. None of your past experiences were comprehensive enough to fully identify with in the present moment. Yet you began to rely on them for your understanding of and approach to the present moment. Thus, the whole process of the fall was accompanied by a corresponding fragmentation of your sense of identity, your very sense of self. By the time of the physical Garden of Eden, you were already perceiving yourself to be more than one. The sexual process came into play in order to produce physical projections within which these apparently separate entities you had split yourself into could take form. Even to this day, these apparently separate beings are but your own fragmented reflections. In the fallen state, you perceive them as separate and distinct. Yet, despite all this talk of a fall and original sin, you are not held prisoner by events that transpired in the dim reaches of your collective memory. You are not born into sin, you are born daily into the presence of God. Yet daily you reenact the original foolishness that is recorded in all your ancient chronicles. Daily you commit original sin, daily you eat of the forbidden fruit, and it is from moment to moment that you keep yourself imprisoned by allowing a dubious rational thought process to come between you and your immediate sensing of God's will. This was the hesitation that led to your initial fall from grace, and it is the same hesitation that keeps you now in a fallen state. There should rightly be no interval between the determination of the deed to take action and the implementation of that action. This rational interference is what caused you to stumble in your primal dance of trust with God. You are now, in effect, sleeping under the influence of what could almost be seen as a spell, an illusion that prevents you from experiencing the clarity of perception that is your natural birthright. Our mission to this planet is to awaken you from sleep by whatever means necessary. So then is chapter 3, but I won't have time to read that. Since I'm going to put the word Mandela effect in this video because it gets me more views, I realize that. And I don't want views so that I can say, oh, I've got this many views. I only want views because I want more and more people to know this truth. And I want them to be exposed to these good books that I have found. And I will give you a chance to read it yourself or listen to me read it because I have the playlist all written down under my first Mandela effect video, the one I made right before this one. I think I'll put it in this one too, in the description bar, so that you might read this book that I'm quoting from. Rather a long quote. But anyway, you can read it for yourself or you can listen to me read it because I have the playlist for my reading of it. And the playlist for my reading of several of Walter Russell books. He wrote a lot about light. One of his books is called The Secret of Light. It's very, very good. And I am hoping that this will wake some people up and let them see that worlds exist around us that are hidden from us simply because we cannot see them. I see in light so many things like this with the naked eye. There's a certain way I have of looking, and I can't really explain it, but I see the most colorful, beautiful landscape like you're seeing here in this picture that is going by. Only I don't see just a little peak of it, I see a big vast array of it, because it's not limited like in this. This is limited to seeing through a circle of a sort, which is the orb, which I think the orb is like a looking device, like the lens of a binocular looking at something in the distance, only shows you a portion of it, and you have to move it around, which I'm doing with the camera. I'm moving it around that area that the light is in. And in light, there's darkness. You can see the dark spots. And I tell you, darkness is necessary. Darkness is not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, when I get my pictures onto my computer, there'll be too much light in them sometime, and I have to increase the shadow. That's really the only thing I do to my pictures, is I decrease the light by increasing the shadow, and then all of the colors just pop out. I mean, you can sort of see them, but when there's too much light, you can't see them very good, and you can't see the deepness of the colors. The light is said to be the darkness that, wait a minute, what's that saying? I read it in a book. The darkness that defines the light. That's what darkness is. You wouldn't know light if you didn't have darkness. And we're a lot like what is projected here. We are, I think, like like we're part of a great big computer that is our creator. And when we think with the creator, we're truly thinking. But when we just think by default, when we just let things happen and we don't use our mind to try to connect with our deeper self, our connection with our higher self, then we're going to live our life just believing what this person and that person says. And I tell you, that's a lot of different things. You can't take it all in. They can't all be right. And the only thing you will ever be sure of is what you have investigated and found out to be true for yourself, without being influenced by anyone telling you to feel bad about believing this or that in a different way from them. That has made so many people stumble, because they are afraid that they're going to lose their very soul if they start believing in something other than the accepted things that they've been told all their life. But I say there's nothing to worry about, because God is good. And if we fail in our attempt to go all the way back into God in this lifetime, we'll have another chance. We'll have another lifetime. And probably the next one will be a little more conducive to learning than this one has been. Anyway, I really love looking at the light, and it's so beautiful and so colorful, and I can't get anyone interested in doing the same thing. I mean, I tell people how this is done, how that I just use a digital camera. I'm mostly in my room with it dark, except for a LED light, and the LED light is a special kind of light. There's a lot of them on the market now. They kind of send their light in strands into it, and it's very intense, and you have to be filming where that light, that LED light, is directly coming at you. It can't be going in an opposite direction. It has to come straight. You have to see the little filaments of light coming directly at you. And then you hold up something made of glass, or it doesn't have to necessarily be glass. It can be a steel ball bearing. It can be porcelain. It can be the shine of the light on your fingertips will show this color in it. It can be a strand of your hair. Light, everything is made of light. And when you focus your digital camera without using the flash, don't use the flash because too much light and you don't see this. Focus it on that little shiny spot, which really that's a concentration of light anywhere it shines like that. And maybe you will get pictures like this. I hope I'm not the only one that can do this. I'm surely I'm not. I mean, I do know one person, oh well, 2 or 3 people who've been able to get pictures similar to this. So try it. There's nothing to lose. Most people have a digital camera, and a LED light's easily acquired. You probably already have one. And see if you can manage to see into light. And then another thing to do, I got 1 minute left, so I will talk till it's up. Another thing to do is to look at empty space like you're trying to see not what is beyond the space, but the space in between things. Try to look at it, especially against a sky. If you're looking at the sky, sometimes it's easier. There's little things that float around. They're just, some people call them floaters, like they say, oh, that's just on your eye. It's your retina torn or something like that. No. It may be that for some people, because some people do have that condition. But what I see is not that. My film shows it, so it couldn't be that. I've ruled out all the things that possibly it could be, like camera flare and lens flare and all of that. It's not that. So do this experiment. Let me know what you find. This is the Dove Lady, over and out for now.